Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hindus Education webinars that happen every Saturday. This is May 17th, it's 5 o'clock, and we are here to discuss it's a slightly different topic from the rest of the webinar topics we've had. This is more newsy and more about discussion than something of practical, immediate use. Um, but it's an interesting thing. It's a trend, and we are trying to figure out if that's the way to go. There is the webinar is titled "Should Students Be Encouraged to Work and Earn While They Study?" There is a trend. It's always been there. There is this thinking that you should sort of work or learn by doing, and you should learn skills. You should work even as early as school and college and so on. So, and as a product of working, you should also be earning. So it has a lot of positive things. I mean, this is to quote unquote to use an American term. It's a done deal in America. This is what they do. Kids work and earn as early as I don't know from middle school. In vacation you'll see them working in McDonald's or doing car wash and stuff and earning money, and of course during college they all work part-time to pay for various aspects of their education. Now that is being promoted here in India as well. Although learning by doing is a very old concept, it goes back to Mahatma Gandhi himself when he tried a new pedagogy in his Naitalim. But that concept has been sort of resuscitated by the new national education policy, and there's a lot of stress on skilling, on apprenticeship. In an earlier webinar, Professor Karkar was talking about, he gave a lot of details about stipends and how these apprenticeship embedded programs work. Now, let's step back and see the philosophy of encouraging students to work and earn while they study. Now, it has its positive aspects. There is a lot of, you get a lot of, when you work, you get a lot of self esteem, you get confidence, you understand things better. And when you earn a little money, and it also adds to your self esteem, and you sort of understand how things work at the workplace, which is very different from the family or even the school and the college. So it gives a glimpse of how things are in the real world. So it's a very, very important experience, and it can well pay for a significant part of your expenses as a student, especially in college uh, or in the university. But there may be other things also. There is a downside. We all come from a certain class, caste, and it is inevitable that there's, if not enough choice, then we may just get on to our old traditional occupations that our fathers and grandfathers did, and we may be encouraged to do that, or perhaps that's the only option available for us. And that's, it's not a good thing. Modern society is about opportunity, providing opportunity to everybody. Whatever your past is, whatever your family circumstances, you should get a decent shot at life. Anyway, so let's we have a very interesting set of panelists here to talk to us. There's a pro vice chancellor, there's a professor, head of the department, and there's a student. So three very it's a very unique mix of panelists, I would say, and I have to thank everybody, all the three, for being part of this. And they're here for a certain reason why they add different perspectives to this whole discussion. We have Parag Kalkar, who's been here with us. He gave us a very enlightening talk about the apprenticeship, a lot of interesting details about the apprenticeship um, embedded degree programs that are being encouraged, that universities are being encouraged to launch from this year. And he laid out some very interesting details about his own university. So welcome, sir. We have Professor Shraddha Kambojkar. She's also from Savitribai Phule University. She's a professor. She'll tell us more. She has lots of experience, very interesting perspectives. And Kaibalyapati Mishra, he's a PhD student. Well, he's I believe is on the final stage of his PhD. He may well be soon submitting his thesis, and he's doing his PhD at the Institute for Social and Economic Change in Bangalore. And this comes from he had written an article for us in which he really touched upon this aspect of getting students, college students, to work and earn while they study. And for that reason, I thought that had an interesting viewpoint. So he's here. So welcome everybody. I start with Professor Kakkar. Sir, tell us more about this whole. You were very tuned to the policy and the thinking of the central government, the union government. You understand the spirit of the national education policy very well. So tell us about this, your personal opinion as well as.
Basically, practical exposure to the students are more important, and the value for money. India is a vast country. In any other country other than India, parents do not take care of the financial expenses for higher education. India is a great country. Our parents are very much caring. And in spite of a child who is growing for post-graduation, even PhD, the parents take care of their money, their pocket money, and many other things. I think the value for money need to be realized by the student. That is the first thing. And a second important thing is the exposure. Student must get exposure of going to various kind of professional setup. He need to understand what is the value for money, value for work. Otherwise, we are losing the value for physical work. Basically, students and the young generation is not interested to work in a physical mode. Basically, they want to work on a computer in air conditioned cabin. But when the student work for 1 or 2 hours, I think they realize the value for money. They realize how to talk. They get socialized. I think human aspect of the students will get developed naturally. Earning may be a small incentive for them, and that will get them realize the value for money. In India, we are all complaining that student does not have a proper footfall in the classroom. Many times they are found in the canteens or other than classroom. I think the value for the investment which is made by the parent need to be realized by the student. If they earn and then invest in higher education, I think their sensitivity, sensibility, and sincereness will have more higher than what it is today. I think for that, I think we need to run this kind of program where student earn something of their own and they work and they learn simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's a very succinct way of putting it. We have to realize the value of money, so we realize what our parents are giving us. What this education means. It costs a lot of money, and somebody is footing the bill. If not, parents, government, everybody is footing the bill for our education. Most often, um, not so much these days, but most often. So that value of money is realized only we work. It's a very interesting succinct point. We'll come back to you. I toss it to the floor to Shraddha. Tell us more. What is your take on this?
Uh, yes, I would agree with what Professor Kalkar said. That I would I would say that earning while you are learning is a very essential kind of a thing that students can do while they are doing their higher studies. Of course, as you rightly pointed out, we are in India and we have certain laws which tell us that no child uh, who is less than 14 years old should be given any gainful work. They should not be made to work while they are studying. So the argument that I'm trying to make is for children who are students who are above 14 years of age. That is number one. Secondly, what do I bring to this discussion? I think that I can speak on this topic from maybe two or three points of view. One, as a parent, because I have a son who is studying and I would very much want him to earn while he is learning. One. Secondly, as a teacher in a university who sees young students all the time trying to make both ends meet while they are living away from their homes and they have to pay for their food, they have to pay for their hostel fees, and then many of them do opt for this kind of a chance to work while they are learning. And I've seen most of them navigate both the things beautifully. And third thing is also because I'm a woman who has completed her education while I was working myself. So maybe from these three perspectives, I can say that it's really a very healthy kind of a thing to do, to work while you are learning. But provided, of course, you are at the right age, provided the work environment where you are supposed to be working is safe for you to work, and provided the gainful employment is, it does not exceed the it does not tilt the balance in favor of getting more work, more money, instead of concentrating on getting yourself educated, getting the right kind of skills for you to realize your potential. So the balance also has to be there. These are the things that I would like to say.
Thank you for making that distinction. I suppose until class 10, laws, actually, there are laws that prevent child labor. So children should not be earning from work. They can, I mean, learning by doing is a good thing, but not necessarily earning. And that's a legal aspect. Thanks for making the discussion distinction, and a very interesting personal story about how you earned while studying. We'll come back to you again. I now toss to Mr. Mishra. What do you think? I suppose you have another perspective.
Yes, sir. So, can you see my slide? Uh, so, is my slide visible? Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. So, I will try to give a student's perspective and a little bit molded in economics of higher education rather. So, if you just look at the question of should students be encouraged to earn while they study, I mean, I also put some insights from my personal experience, given the fact that just like ma'am said, since my matriculation also I have involved myself in tutoring to students to back my financial needs in my education. So when you say that should students be encouraged to earn while they study, we are actually assuming the fact that they will be liking it. But in most of the cases, I would say that it's a compulsion that pushes the students to actually divert their scope from learning to engage themselves in a work or to earn something. And the most important thing that I think we should be asking currently is that how are our younger generations spending their time, the residual time that they are having out of their usual learning schedule. What is the residual time that they are having? But if you look at the time use survey data that we have, it gives little bit idea about how people are spending their time. But we need more data on how students are actually spending their time, just like we have in case of Western and European countries. But the question that we have in front of us is that can we formalize this learning with earning culture in India? If yes, then what we should be doing? So UGC's main scheme that we have here, that is earn while you learn scheme. So the objective is to develop a student as a multifaceted personality with academic excellence and a committed towards egalitarian society. But then there are so many assumptions that are coming into place that I feel before we are actually saying that this is a very good thing for a student to do. And let me start with the fact that it's not something new that is happening in India. Maybe we are realizing this thing as a new thing because of the success stories of a few. But in India, this has been happening since quite some time. Just like ma'am said, in her education time also, she actually resorted to earning while educating herself. But then is it actually learning by doing? If you look at the academia, the literature, it doesn't look like it's learning by doing, because the academic notion of learning by doing is that you're doing something that is related to what you are learning. But essentially what we are indicating towards is you are learning and earning. So both the things are, maybe you can say that the learning by doing term has been molded for use in this case. But one classic example is the case of teaching assistants in case of PhD students. So what they are actually doing research, a small part of that actually they are actually teaching to the younger masters or undergraduate students as a part of the teaching assistantship. So that can be termed as a learning by doing. If we actually focus on that, so what we are focusing is the time variable of our earning equation that you used to have in economics, where individuals are actually earning over a period of time, but there is a opportunity cost that is happening. So when somebody is actually entering to higher education, there is an opportunity cost that they are taking into mind, that if I will be, engaging myself in actually a employment, then I will be earning something. But when I'm going to choose to, be in higher education, I'm actually foregoing some of my employment opportunities and foregoing some of my earnings. So there is an opportunity cost trade-off that is already happening in the student's mind. But now when you are actually focusing on, again, earning as a part of learning, we have to assume that the working environment, the culture, and everything should be, you know very much intact and law abide in nature. Why? I will come to some of the personal experiences, how this thing can actually impact, and why we need a student working law in India before you try to formalize this thing as a part of the curriculum. So some people might be doing it to support their family, some people might be doing to support their education, but some people might be doing just for some money. But in India, if you compare with the Western countries, the direty of the situation, the problematicness of the situation is this, that they are actually doing it mostly to support their family instead of supporting their education. Because most of the education in higher education, if you see, the number of individuals in private education, the private universities is increasing, but still most of the students are actually dependent on public universities. So because their education is mostly free, so why they are earning, they are actually earning for their family. Now if you actually move forward and look at the India's informal sector, because we don't have the data, we don't know that what is the, big segment that we are actually talking about. If you look at the simply the tutorial sector, the tutorial industry that India has, then you will see that it's a $1 billion economy, if approximately some $7.5 billion economy that we are actually talking about. You must have heard about the plight of the guest lecturers, the PhD students who don't have any, financial backup of fellowship. They are actually resorting to these sort of things. So when you are actually looking at these sort of things, there are already so much of things that are happening that you need to account for. If you actually, try to formalize something like learning by doing, and to try to make the environment better for them. And if you just look at the gender perspective of that, given the patriarchiness of the society that we have, it might not happen that a son who is growing older and entering higher education, they might be shouldering their father's responsibility, but it is always assumed that the girl who is actually, going higher in the higher education, they are expected to shoulder their mother's responsibilities. So in that way, you can say that in form of care economy, in form of informal sector, there are a large segment of the students who are in higher education and still working. We have not accounted for that yet. Now if you try to learn from the Western countries, they are starting from 40 to 80%, of the higher education students are actually, earning there. Why it is very difficult to adapt here? Because our, education system is not so flexible yet, and we are now on the, trying to implement the new education policy, but it will take some time for the, the apprenticeship culture to, get embedded in our, veins, and for the students to assume that, okay, if I'm assuming higher education, if I'm getting educated, then I should look for some employment opportunities. And the most important thing is that we don't have any legal and policy framework to actually safeguard students in this case. I'll give you a personal experience. I was teaching in a, teaching in a tutorial institute to plus two students and graduation students. So what happens is that there's some people who actually leave the institute before, just before the exam. So the owner, what he says, that okay, many people went, so we cannot pay for your last 2 3 months, and I don't have anybody else to go for that. Okay, so when these sort of things happen, you should, as we need to understand the fact that, the Baker's model, the Gary Baker's model, that the time investment in this sort of thing is actually, is an investment for the individual. So when you're taking some part of the time to work, they are actually expected to perform weaker in the, in the long run. So what we need basically is that we need a legal and policy framework, just like US has the National Student Work Framework to safeguard the, the rights, and the payments that students are actually receiving. I think sir can, put more light on this thing, so that actually, so this war culture can actually emerge as a more inequity, sort of thing that is exactly happening in Indian, higher education. I will talk about it more as we move forward. So for the time being, Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. I suppose you're getting ready for your defense. Thanks for
No,
that
sir.
presentation. Sir, I would ask you what, as any, there's so much, the point that comes, that has come through in all these uh, discussions is the institutionalization. Has anyone, any school or college institutionalized it? Like, have they given in-house opportunities for students to work in college, university? Has anyone tried that? How would you see this whole issue?
Yes, the thing is that
In our
I mean,
university, we have Karmavir Bhaurav Patil Earn and Learn scheme, which is available for the students. Basically, that it's economically weaker section student. In our affiliated college also, it is the only unique scheme in run in whole India, where we invest almost more than 2 crore rupees, where students work for at least 2 to 3 hours every day for 5 days a week, and normally they are paid 65 rupees, I think, per hour. So almost close to 200 rupees per day is been paid for 2 3 hours. Some office work, some garden work which they do depends upon the coordinator and availability of their work. Naturally, that help us to get some kind of support to their higher education. As rightly pointed out by the earlier speaker, I think our Savitribai Phule Pune University higher education is highly subsidized. Many courses we are running very at a very minor cost, very minor cost. Our hostel cost is very low. Our fooding cost is very low. Still, we try to give back to the student because they should invest in their career much better than any other student. So we get most the first generation student where we support them with Earn and Learn scheme, which is run, and we are very proud to run this scheme in Savitribai Phule Pune University. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Always interesting details, informative interventions that you do. Um, I just wanted to say, whoever is watching, there is a prize for asking good questions. We will select a few questions, and then, for the prize is, for free online access to the Hindu website. So all the archives, this tremendous material in the inside the Hindu website. So you get free access to it if you go ahead and ask good, intelligent questions. The panelists will decide which ones deserve those prizes. So please keep coming. Please keep your questions going wherever you are. This is a discussion webinar, and it's good to get different, multiple perspectives and thrashed out, I suppose. So feel free to ask questions, and they will be considered for a prize. We move on. Shraddha, what do you say? I mean, you heard the Pro VC say it. What is your how is that program administered at your institution with your
Mm.
students, and what comments you
Yes.
have for anyone thinking on these lines?
Yes. For this, maybe we need to go back to the All India Survey of Higher Education, which tells us that a big majority of students who are taking higher education, they take their higher education in universities that are state universities, such as the one where I teach, Savitribai Phule Pune University. So even if we hear a lot of hype about central universities and private universities, the reality, the numbers speak as far as the AISHE data goes. More than 33% people who are taking their education take it from state universities, which are sponsored by the state governments. Secondly, the history of Maharashtra, which incidentally is my subject, it also has this brilliant lineage and heritage of people who have thought about how education can contribute to the final eventual goal of any human being, that is realizing their true potential. We of course know about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who said, "Educate and unite and agitate." So education has been given a lot of importance. People have stressed on education throughout the social reform movements that happened in modern India and modern Maharashtra. Jyotirao Phule and his Satyashodak Samaj, as we know, contributed a great deal to universalization of education in terms of starting education, giving education to girls, giving it to the then untouchable students, so on and so forth. So we have that very robust tradition of education being given to people who really want to take education. In this tradition of Satyashodhaks, we have the Karmavir Bhaurao Patil, who started the Earn and Learn scheme. He called it Kamva and Shikwa. So, earn and learn. He started this scheme wherein students were provided decent, dignified work, a safe work environment, and they were also given education simultaneously. Uh, in my university, there was this college in Sangamner which initiated this scheme, taking inspiration from Bhaurao Patil's initiative, which was run in the Rayat Shikshan Sanstha. So from there it came to the college in Sangamner, and then the good offices of our university administrators back in the 80s, they kind of implemented the scheme to all the students who wanted or who demanded work while they were studying. Today, the position, as rightly pointed out by Professor Kalkar, is that the annual budget of this Earn and Learn scheme for Savitribai Phule Pune University is 6 crore rupees for colleges and the campus students. So, as far as the campus students go, uh, about 10% students on campus, that is out of let's say 4,500 students, more than 450 students opt for this scheme, and as Professor Kakar has already informed, they are given work which is very dignified. So those who want to work in the field, they are given work with gardening and stuff. But those who want to do office work, like in my own history department, there are students who come and do the data entry for digitization of the library books. So that kind of a balance of those who want to work with their hands, those who want to work on the computers or with pen and paper, that kind of a balance and choice is also given to the students. So I think that it's a very fair kind of a method of implementation of the scheme. And as of today speaking, I mean, as we speak today, in my university, I know at least 7 to 8 professors who, in their own student days while they were studying here in the university, have been a part of the Earn and Learn scheme. So they have now become heads of departments, professors, lecturers, also in the administration, right here in the university itself. So I think it's a brilliant scheme wherein the balance is struck in a very fair manner. That's how it is implemented.
Interesting. Perhaps this can be a role model for other universities too. Very interesting that 6 crore rupees is allocated for this. Um, I don't know. I haven't seen such schemes in where I have grown up or raised or studied. Very interesting. Perhaps
Add, if I
yes.
may add a line, uh, this 6 crore is also given to the colleges, not just for this limited ivory tower thing of the campus. We have a network of more than 700 colleges where the students work and the college sends us the invoice, and the university pays for their work at the rate that Professor Karkar informed. So it's
Right.
a big
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. He was saying affiliated colleges too. Right. Fairly extensive. Okay, let's move on. From that interesting point, there is some questions are coming in. There's one question that says, can we also implement this type of learn and earn scheme in government schools? Well, until 10, you cannot, legally, you cannot do that because child labor is banned in India for good reason. But what about higher secondary schools? Is it possible? Class 11 and 12.
To me, or
Anyone? both of you?
Um, Higher secondary, I don't think so because of this 14-year-old threshold. And then they have their all important 10th boards. But in junior colleges, so the moment they enter college, I think they can do some light work. And 3 hours a day is not too much. Timings are also uh, chosen by the students. Sometimes they work 6 to 9 in the morning, sometimes 3 to 6 in the evening, depending what they want. So it's only above 14, but it definitely can be universalized, like the Manarega or some such thing. Some of the schemes, midday meal scheme.
Okay. No, he was. I was referring to what's called junior college in Maharashtra. Elsewhere, it's done in schools. I was talking about that.
Yes.
Okay. What else? Some other questions. Yes. Priyanka Mohanty. She's asking, being a part-time. I think she means being a part-time lecturer. I am interested to know what will be the possible role and responsibilities of a lecturer or faculty towards his or her students in the era of apprenticeship. Does it change?
So I mean, I have not been in a capacity of a lecturer, but then I mean, as a student, as I already told, and just like the next question that is referring by Abhishek Kumar. So, will it not affect the quality of education and the mental well-being of the students? The next
Okay.
question.
Okay. Can we
So,
flash that question? I'll read the question for.
yes.
In a country like India, where many students come from economically weaker backgrounds, they always face financial difficulties as cost of living is getting high everywhere in India. So they always want to earn some money to manage that, but there is potential that this would impact on their education and mental health too. Okay, how can universities and policymakers balance the need for students to earn while they learn without compromising the quality of their education and mental well-being? Is 2 3 hours a day good enough? I mean, how strenuous should it be? Should it be work with your hands or with your mind or what? What's the policy? What should be the approach? If we were to institutionalize this, what should we do?
So I mean, I guess so. Within the capacity of higher education institutions, just like ma'am said about the colleges and universities, I think the scope is very limited to maybe only economically weaker section students, or from the larger scope of this all the students, you can only accommodate a few amount of students. But if you want to generalize this thing to make it as a culture that is embedded within the education system of India, then I think we have to step outside the universities, and we have to take care of this thing as a part of general working culture, the labor culture in India. So if you actually step outside, the first problem that comes, I mean, to your mind is that already the unemployment situation is little bit worse in our country. And when you can have someone work full time, why will you take the psychological burden of employing someone for the part time purpose? So that's one the demerit that is there in our system. We need to take care of that. But then the most important thing is that when once you step outside the university, in the absence of any law or nationwide law to protect individuals, I mean particularly students, then actually it actually causes their psychological and financial burden, because they can't hold anybody accountable for their the job that they have done, because things are pretty informal. So I think, I mean, that's why, I mean, that's what I pointed out, that we need to have a, I mean, if we want to, I mean, have this thing in our system, then we need to have a national student working scheme, or some rules regulations that corporations who are actually employing students in their as a part of their labor force in a part-time way, they need to abide by those things. So yeah, that's what I think.
So you mentioned the national students work policy that India should probably have. Have you studied other such policies elsewhere in other countries? What do they say?
Yes, sir. I mean, in US, you definitely have these sort of policies. In US and Europe, the Western countries, these sort of policies have been prevalent since quite some time. because just like ma'am said about the Maharashtrian history where these sort of things were encouraged before, and you pointed out the Gandhian philosophies. If you just look at the US thing, I mean, where I mean the policy making has been significantly informed by economics. So if you go back to the era of Kenneth J. Arrow and all those people, so the learning by doing was a significant part of their education system since then. So they do have these sort of policies that actually safeguard the interest of I mean individuals. Just to take for example, if somebody is working in a cafe, then their minimum wage is actually defined. If you work in United States, based on the nature of the cafe, based on the nature of the city, the amount of money that they are getting, this is defined. This is just an example of how we can go about I mean ensuring a parity and that sort of things when it comes to national I mean student welfare policy. Then students are definitely guaranteed some I mean psychological support or I mean mental health support. I mean this has been recently after COVID-19 implemented I mean throughout India. That's a praiseworthy thing that has been there, but we need to implement it in a societal level, because the thing is that I mean, even if somebody is feeling something, psychologically, so I'm sure you guys are all aware of, then they are not reaching out to I mean, the respective consultant to receive, I mean, those sort of treatment. So we need to have a wholesome, I mean, a labor law that safeguards the interest, the financial, the psychological, and socioeconomic interest of the, I mean, individuals, students, so that they can actually feel secured when they are actually, I mean, volunteering to work in a institution outside their university. So, yeah.
Okay, I would like to intervene here. You brought up Maharashtra and the positive aspect. There is a little bit of the state where I live, where I was born and raised. Um, Politically, it was one of the turning points in the political system happened when the Congress government under when Rajagopalachari was the chief minister. He implemented a scheme in which he said, partly because there were not enough teachers at that time, because the government didn't have enough money to recruit. So he said students can go and work with their families, whatever their traditional occupation is, so they can study for some time and go to fields or wherever to do that. And that became a political turning point, because it was the opposition, the current ruling party, DMK, and the whole Dravidian movement, they took it up and said this only reinforces the caste system. In fact, they gave a different name. They said this is Kula Kalvi Thittam, or Kula, traditional hereditary occupation scheme. This is not something to encourage learning by doing. It is a background, a backdoor entry of the caste system. Because inevitably, if you go and work with your parents, you're going to stick to your traditional occupations. Now, recently there was a news item in the media, and it was flashed, and this is somewhere in a southern state. The students, I think she was a topper. There were several of them. They were toppers. Now that the results are out, and one of the things they that she was born in a family of sweepers, so they. And she was cleaning toilets in the school and earning money and paying for the hostel. Now that is I mean, in one sense, it's good, it's positive, it's learning by doing. You're earning while you're studying. But why is it that she had to go back to the occupation of her parents? What is How do we regulate this? How do we look at this? Is there a there will be menial jobs, there will be jobs where you have to work, and what is dignified, what is not? I mean, Gandhiji had upper caste cleaning toilets to sort of make it even. That's what he tried to do when he was confronted with this question. But how do we deal with this? It's a real issue.
Very true. When I was discussing our webinar with some of my colleagues who come from various backgrounds, of course, a colleague of mine comes from the family of shepherds. He narrated that while he was a high school student, during vacations, he had to go take his sheep for grazing. And he narrated that if he was seen by some of his upper caste classmates, he would feel ashamed that he is, grazing the sheep. So the element of caste and the gravity of this shame, the whole hierarchical power structure, it's very real, even if it may be slightly less, less. Is harmful in the or less visible in the cities, but it's very much there. So one doesn't want, obviously, the caste system to be reinforced through this earn and learn kind of a thing. But this is also where the whole idea of collective wisdom of any society, I think, comes into the picture, and it's the responsibility really of all the members of any given society, that one, they should try and imbibe this idea of giving dignity to any form of labor, may it be manual labor, may it be other kinds of labor. So this idea of giving dignity to any kind of labor, that is something that needs to be imbibed by each member of a society, not just the universities and all these protected and safe spaces. But also, as Kaibalyapati earlier said, I think that some level of policy intervention also can be done. It may not be that the students, the kind of work that the students are made to do is useful or aligned with their degrees, but students may be involved in, they may be roped in to do certain jobs and tasks which have transferable skills like content writing and other kinds of work which are transferable skills. One. Secondly, the policy level intervention could be perhaps something like the CSR policy that the government has initiated. So the government, by a stroke of their pen, they have asked the private enterprises to give a part of their profits every year for CSR work. Something like that in the form of perhaps tax reductions could be worked out by the policymakers for enterprises which provide safe space and good working environment for students while they are learning. So if I'm employing a student in my hotel or in my cafe or in my shop, then maybe my GST will, instead of going in X slab, it will go in X minus 10 or X minus 5 kind of a gap. That kind of a incentive, financial in real terms, if it is provided, then perhaps this thing can work out in a more meaningful and substantive fashion. That's what I feel.
And
I
so
think,
adding on the
yeah, go ahead,
yes,
go ahead. Yeah.
is adding on the policy aspects, there are many caveats that are actually emerging. If you just look at the internship scheme, so recently internship is currently embedded into the, I mean, if anybody is actually reading economics, at least they are definitely bound to do some, I mean, internship in some institutions. But then the problem is that it's not actually, in economics literature what we see, it's not actually employing towards human capital formation. Rather, it's just a signal. It's a part of the curriculum that, okay, if you are enrolling in internship, you will be given some 100 marks or something like that, end semester. But then individuals is getting that, but the real value addition is not happening. I mean, if you just look at, cross check on the internet, even in RBI like institutions who are actually, giving internship to students, they are complaining that, okay, we're going there, we're just sitting there, nobody's actually giving us any actual work. So I mean, the CSR responsibilities that the companies are actually employing on field is not this just to abide by the rule, but not actually the augmenting capital of the individual that is happening. So that is one caveat that is actually emerging, that actually I just crossed my mind. So
No, no, I think we are on to something. What I suggest perhaps we can do as a newspaper, we can come up with like a draft policy. Perhaps you can take the lead and we can get it peer reviewed, not by just Shraddha or Professor Khakkar, maybe others too, and sort of come up, because there's so much emphasis on this. Perhaps we can come up with some kind of an outline, at least a draft policy for the government. What do you say? We can
Definitely,
put
sir.
together something
Definitely,
that
sir.
would be relevant. We can get inputs from a range of academics. We can get inputs from economists, as you were saying. We don't look at it as an economic activity. We see it as some other issue. But yeah,
Yes.
that those inputs and academicians, education institutions, heads of and sociologists and others too, and sort of come up with a good draft policy. Well, it's a task for us. I hope I certainly will want to do that. We have
Yes.
more interesting questions. Maithili, I didn't quite understand. Perhaps maybe we can flash this and perhaps the panelists can understand better. You're saying, as a student, I do agree with the fact that students should work. Okay. But are the ways out for this notion, the government opportunity schemes, if they exist, do not reach the ground level? And secondly, how can we make out as of which opportunities are real, which are fake, keeping in mind the fake media, which are fraudsters most probably? Okay. And could you give some ways out for learning by doing and thus earning? Okay. Any suggestions?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Maithili, for bringing out this information. Uh, yeah, you know,
She's a student.
disconnect. Yeah, disconnect point, making that visible. Yes, very much so. I mean, the safe environment that I was earlier talking about, that has a lot to do with this misinformation thing, because unless and until universities or colleges or whatever are the higher education institutions, unless and until they are actively involved in this whole interaction between the employer, in this case, I mean the internship companies or enterprises, and the students, if unless the institutions are in between, I wouldn't recommend that to any of my students, especially the girl students, because one doesn't know what kind of a place the student is leaving the campus for. That is something very important. So the information has to be vetted by the institution. And there again, maybe Professor Kalkar would have been a better person to talk on this. But our university has developed a portal where the employers, the potential employers, they register themselves, and then they say that we want so many people with so many skills, such and such skills. So maybe these are skills related to economics, accounting, or some such thing. Or sometimes there are people who just need basic skills like assembling light bulbs, for example. So another thing that could be done is higher education institutions providing the place for the work to be done. So that can also be done in the sense that if this example of assembling of light bulbs, for example, if the university or the college gives them a place where the students will work 3 hours a day and they will do the assembly job, and then the company people will drop the spare, they will drop the parts and then they will take away the assembled goods. Then in that case, the students are in a safe place physically. They also get to work, and there is no question of this misinformation in addition to the safety of the students. But that kind of increases the burden and the responsibility on higher education institutions, for which they can also perhaps be incentivized financially. But like in our case, it's good enough for us to know that our students are self-reliant, and the university is taking care of the responsibilities on itself. But maybe that's not a model for all the universities, perhaps. But the role of the role of the educational institutions becomes very important in this case.
One more aspect of the national students work policy, I suppose that was there's another. Well, she has taken it to another dimension. She's relating, Sonali Mukherjee is relating to this to career and skill, and that is interesting, and I think it's very important too. What she's asking is, should the policymakers make a skill mapping for the students, and the counseling must be made as to what type of work the students can do while going for a higher education, what role the state government can play to make this scheme known to students, parents, and education stakeholders. I think she's relating it to eventually the career and employment too, which we haven't looked at. But I think that makes sense.
Yes,
Go ahead.
the skill mapping thing that she has correctly pointed out, that I also told in my, presentation part. So we need a, survey that is focusing on students only, those students who are enrolled. This is something that is, that is happening in all Western countries. And when you know that, and not only in a cross-sectional nature, on a longitudinal nature over time, if we can track the progress of students. I'm not saying that from the perspective of an economist for whom, we need data. We live on data, but then, to understand how our students are actually, skilled. And the one big problem, if you try to understand that, okay, what is the, average skill level of, all over the India. There are so many, company CEOs complaining that, okay, Indian students are not, up to the level of the job requirement and things like that. But we have no idea that how students are skilled in India. There is no actual, aptitude level, test that is conducted across India, that actually can, categorize Indian students across, different skill groups and things like that. So when we have that sort of things, one thing that will come up with that is that actually in India, maybe I have a feeling that above 40 to 50 percent of the students are actually doing some sort of work to earn their living. Maybe not in the formal sector, most likely, but in informal sector, they are actually engaged in some sort of, this sort of work. If you just look at the data, the NSSO data that actually publishes, that doesn't publish that which individual is actually working as a tutor, but they do publish the how much a individual household is spending on your private tutorship. I believe that a large portion of these private tutors are higher education going students. And if you see that over time, the amount of, expenditure on private tuitions has gone significantly up. Recently, little bit that it has gone down, but there are different questions also that, if you were actually promoting private tutorship, are we actually, having a trade-off with private institutions? Are we requiring less private institutions? But if you want to answer their sort of questions, we need to have a skill mapping of, the youth, the demographic evident, that we are actually claiming we are having, such a huge number. So yeah.
No, it's another aspect for the policy, I suppose. So, earning while you studying is not just about learning the value of work and money and value of money and so on, but also perhaps related to your own skills and your own education, so that it develops your career. Another interesting point too. We have so there's a very interesting outcome of this webinar. So we will get a start working on a draft policies, national students work policy, I suppose, which we can submit to the government after, of course, sending it around, circulating it, asking for opinions, inputs from various stakeholders, experts. So we will get started on that. Will Kaivalyapati take it up for a draft
Definitely.
okay? When is your defense?
Maybe in 6 months. I don't know.
6 months. Okay. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so it's a very interesting outcome of the webinar. Thanks, everybody. Professor Kalkar had to drop out because of connectivity issues, but very wonderful, very interesting questions, very pointed, insightful questions, insightful answers, and we have a task. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this
Thank you.
webinar. We will see you next Saturday, same time, for yet another webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.